The Korean protesters who took to the streets to peacefully share their stance against the imposition of martial law continue to secure much applause from those overseas for their tangible dedication to shaping their country's democracy. With more in Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome. It's Friday, December 20th here in Korea and you're watching Press Perspective. According to American philosopher John Dewey, democracy is a moral ideal, one that requires actual work and effort by people because it is they who steer the ship of the state. Now, this being said, today we delve yet again into the public's effort here to uphold democracy. For more on this, I have Yang Chien-Hao, a journalist from Taiwan based here in Seoul. Chien-Hao, as always, welcome back.
Good evening, glad to be here.
And I also have writer Colin Marshall with us as well because it's Friday. Colin, it's a pleasure.
Thanks for having me as always.
Right, Colin, the foreign media, there's been quite a bit of coverage about Korea's democracy yet again. What appears to be the general assessment?
Well, in the United States, where I'm from, there is a big deal made of this idea of journalistic objectivity or neutrality. You know, you shouldn't be taking a side. But I do get the sense in stories published in the US press or in other Western countries that they're definitely on the side of the protesters. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate this too much, but you read a lot of these stories, you can come away with the impression, oh, President Yoon is bad and the protesters are good. I mean, I recall a few years ago, the Washington Post in the US, a major newspaper, changed its slogan to "Democracy dies in darkness." Very vivid slogan, but it tells you kind of where they're coming from. And I think this whole angle of South Koreans, these people saved democracy. They saved their own imperiled democracy that the president was threatening. I'm not saying that's wrong, but it is the angle that has been gone with in a lot of the Western press and other countries as well. I do notice, this stuck out to me, that when discussing President Yoon's announcement initially of martial law, when describing sort of what he was saying, they do reference his evocation of supposed North Korean forces, North Korean sympathizers blocking governance within South Korea. And a lot of these US or other Western countries' media, they just sort of dismiss it out of hand as ridiculous. And maybe it is. But, I mean, he certainly didn't provide evidence. He provided no evidence, but at the same time, Korea has changed a lot if the foreign media are now rejecting out of hand the very idea that North Korea could influence its internal workings. I mean, North Korea is still there. The relationship between the countries hasn't changed that much, but now it's just, come on, it's ridiculous. So take it for what it's worth. Maybe it is ridiculous, maybe it's not, but I do find North Korea tends to be overestimated by foreign press as an existential threat to South Korea and underestimated in its potential to influence South Korea. But that's a different subject for another day.
Right, it really is. Chien-Hao, before we delve any further, what has been the response in Taiwan to South Korea's vote to impeach the president at the parliament that was this past weekend?
Oh, many people are like paying attention to that. Many of my stories, like, including TV reports and text reports, are like gaining like 100,000 viewers. So this is like quite high. People, they begin to know the reason that President Yoon announcing martial law is only due to his contradiction with the parliament instead of any invasions or attack from North Korea or any kind of emergency situation. And especially for those who have followed my reports or updates in recent years, they already know that the President Yoon's problem. For example, we have the First Lady's cases of like speculating in stocks. And also President Yoon posing a veto on special prosecutors for the First Lady and also on other bills passed by the opposition party for totally 24 times. So, and then his martial law announcement, lack of fully discussion with other cabinet members and without telling the National Assembly. And new testimonies has shown that like the police and military leaders they have tell the media that they got the order from the president to arrest the politicians or even judges, which made people realizing that it's more to like political purge. So lack of legitimacy. So people in Taiwan, we really focused on the vote of the impeachment, and people finally trying to put themselves into Korean shoes. Like, think about it. If you are a Korean in this kind of situation, you might be definitely very angry too. And Taiwan and South Korea, indeed, we have very similar progress of democratization. So we have that very similar kind of feeling. And 8 years ago, we have witnessed like President Park Geun-hye being impeached, and now it happened again. And we see that South Korean people, they're trying to show their power or anger or voices, trying to really play an actual role in their history instead of ignoring it.
Right. And Colin, while Chien-Hao focuses on the actual factual information about the political turmoil here in the country, some publications have sought to ponder on how a Trump administration would have possibly responded to the political turmoil here in South Korea if it had been in power at the time. What do you believe is the background behind such pondering, if you will?
Yes, Donald Trump, whatever else you can say about him, compels media attention. He did during his first term, and he's doing it again. Now he's been reelected, but he's not actually in office yet. So the press has to speculate. Well, if he was already president, what would he do? And of course, there was this wave of articles sort of postulating, oh, what if Trump does what Yoon Suk-yeol did? What if he were to declare martial law? But then we have this sort of more subtle genre of pieces. What if President Trump, what if he was president again now? And what would his relationship be with Yoon Suk-yeol? Because there was some thinking, for better or for worse, some hopes or perhaps fears that Trump and Yoon would get along well. This idea that they're kind of the same type of guy. Some thought it. They have similarities in their personality, perhaps, or style of governance. But we may never get to find out. We'll see how it plays out in the Constitutional Court. But I think the background you're getting at here, or what's more relevant, is that this question of Trump's desire to keep U.S. military presence as it is in Korea or not, because he's complained. Trump has complained aloud, it's costing us too much. We're paying too much money to keep troops in Korea and Japan, not getting anything out of it, in his characteristic rhetorical style. And I think there's no such thing as a coherent Trumpism ideologically, but I heard it put this way. A lot of Trump voters, the first time around or this time around in America, they're frustrated with whether it be continued ingress of immigrants, whether it be foreign wars, whether it be trade deals. They're frustrated with the U.S.'s entanglements with the world outside its borders. And if that's one of the forces that brought Trump to power, one of the sentiments that brought Trump to power again, you do wonder, would he intervene? Would he want to intervene for the preservation of South Korea's democracy? Or would he have the attitude like, look, it's not our problem. We're giving you enough money as it is. That's my best Trump impression, by the way. But not very good, I realize, but I think we all understand that's how he would be thinking, one way or the other. He maybe wouldn't be as eager as some previous U.S. presidents to step in and prevent martial law, prevent democracy from becoming something else.
You're right. I suppose we'll know for sure when he enters power again on January 20th then. Chien-Hao, the political turmoil in the country has also prompted quite a bit of foreign media attention on the unique traits, if you will, of the society here. What more can you share?
During the first night when the martial law was being announced, I arrived at the National Assembly around 2 a.m. During that time, it was like already the Parliament has already passed to cancel the martial law, and I. In front of the National Assembly, I've seen many people are gathering, and half of them are under 30s, and including many young students who are like high school students and even like university students. And I remember I filmed and university students, she's like speaking in front of the gate, in the front gate of the National Assembly, saying that originally I didn't want to come here, but my junior classmates, she decided to come, so I follow her. I've never experienced the martial law, and I've never experienced the dictatorship period like during the 80s, and I was really worried that I might be shot by the special forces. But I've overcome my fear, and I finally come here. So for the young generation, it's a progress of realizing and deciding to protect the democratic system. Narrowly, when we speak of attending politics, many people only think about voting, but it's indeed more like also taking this kind of action is kind of attending the politics. I mean, I do witness female groups attending, and also if you see on like Facebook fan page, many female NGOs and civil groups, they are calling people to join the protest. Originally, most of the younger generations, if you look at the presidential election in 2017, those in their 20s and 30s, they are the core supporters for the Democratic parties or the progressive candidates. But because of the continual sexual harassment cases by the star Democratic party politicians such as Oh Go-dun and the former Busan mayor and Park Won-sun, the Seoul mayor. So we can see that many young girls, young female in South Korea, they were protesting, demonstrating on the street, calling the attention for the current status of female being like harassed or discriminated. But meanwhile, it also triggered the attacks of the counterattacks of the male groups, claiming that feminism is wrong, and those female victims, they were just single cases, and those women, they are trying to make feminism like female hegemony. So during the election in 2022, 2 years ago, we can see that President Yoon, the candidate Yoon, stood for this kind of advocation. Also, he's trying to abolish the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, and successfully it attracts young male voters for him. And the gap, the contradiction among the gender issue made young male Korean voters, they changed their mind to vote for the conservative. The split vote of the younger generations in South Korea is one of the main reasons that blocked the Democratic candidate Lee Jae-myung from winning. So now the female groups comes out, again, showing their anger toward President Yoon because they can't see any improvement on gender issues, but with more like sexual harassing or cybersexual cases or even deepfake cases happening, and most of the victims were female. And to them, I think President Yoon is a disaster.
Right. Meanwhile, Colin, on a lighter note, if you will, Bloomberg claims that the prompt suspension of the president from duty is owing to Korea's pali-pali culture, referring to the hurry-hurry culture that we have. Would you say this is a fair assessment?
It's an intriguing take. This is, of course, the republic or the civilization of pali-pali, variously translated hurry-hurry, quickly, all about getting things done fast. And friends who visit from foreign countries, even the West, they will be impressed. Every time they come, it's just, wow, that could never get done so fast in America or in the UK or wherever it might be. There are a lot of services that either don't exist elsewhere, or if they do exist, they move a lot faster here than they do in other countries. But anybody who has studied Korean knows this word, it occurs so quickly in your Korean language education. It's one of the first things you learn, pali-pali. And you think about, why is it? Why would things be moving so fast here? And anybody who's worked here in Korea for a long time can tell you, pali-pali is partially about problems getting to a critical point. And then you have to work fast because people have not been taking responsibility necessarily up until the last minute. So sometimes pali-pali comes at the very end of a long process where not a lot is getting done, or incipient problems are not getting addressed. And so there's kind of a negative side to it too, or a side that isn't all about convenience, that it's about the way that perhaps sometimes no one really is tasked with fixing a certain problem before it grows out of control. And then it's time to get pali-pali.
Right. Chien-Hao, the latest political events here, they've also shed a renewed interest perhaps in K-pop songs like Into the New World by Girls' Generation,
Yes.
K-movies like 12/12 The Day. Have you seen it?
Yeah, not really.
Right,
But
neither
I
have I,
was
actually.
gonna be the translator of the book before.
Oh, right, interesting.
Yeah, for the Mandarin version.
Oh, right then. Speaking about books also, Han Gang's Human Acts is also
Right.
getting quite a bit of attention. What do you suppose are some of these shared traits of K-productions that deal with history?
I need to say Koreans are really good at producing those kind of issues, historical issues into those cultural stuffs. For example, we can see many movies, they are describing how cruel it was during the dictatorship period and how it was against with the humanity. And not only domestically, but also it is internationally popular and gained many attention. Before 2010, we have the movie called 화려한 휴가, luxury vacation, but English we officially translated into May 18th, which is for Gwangju Massacre and the Democratization Movement. And Attorney in 2013, which is for based on the experience of former President Roh Moo-hyun when he was a human rights lawyer. And also we have seen like Taxi Driver and 1987, these two movies. Taxi Driver is also for the Gwangju Massacre and Gwangju Uprising. And 1987, it was like describing the like civil movements, like people they are like going on the street protesting, asking President Chun Doo-hwan to release his power. And also, when talking about the Gwangju uprising, we can also see like Han Gang's Human Acts. She described many parts of it. And when covering the protest in the past 2 weeks, as my experience, there are at least 3 young students. They told me that they've watched the 12/12 the day, the Seoul bomb, the movie about the coup and martial law, and they say that they've just watched that this year or last year, and they were afraid of this kind of situation happen again. So that's why they come out of the street and protesting. And in Taiwan, we also experienced martial law. We talked about it before, and we also experienced like military dictatorship for 40 or 50 years. So Taiwan and South Korea, we have very similar experience, and we also have tremendous history ingredients. But many Taiwanese people are thinking that why can't Taiwanese make this kind of movies? It has been a major debate these 10 years. Why can Korean do, but why can't Taiwanese do? We don't have to be like Korea making those like big movies just like Hollywood. No, but why can't Taiwanese make such movies into success? I think the main reason is because like many Taiwanese producers and artists, those actors, they are only focusing their markets to China. And you know, this kind of historical ingredients, these kind of issues are very sensitive. If you talk about democratization, if you talk about protest, demonstration on streets, is very sensitive in China. So that makes like Taiwanese, those companies, they aren't willing to make these kind of things on the screen. So it's kind of self-censorship indeed.
Right, that is an interesting input there. Colin, some claim that Korea's protest culture, it will serve to ultimately power forward the democracy here in the country. Do you share this view?
I think there's truth to that, but also you have to ask a very simple, a very obvious sounding question, which is, why were the protesters out there? Why did they gather in front of the National Assembly? Because what is at issue, as I understand it, is that President Yoon tried to impose martial law without giving, indeed, while preventing the National Assembly from voting on it. He is empowered in the Constitution to impose martial law, technically, but he is also required to allow a vote, which is exactly what he was trying not to do. Okay, this is a matter for the Constitutional Court. They'll work it out, and it sounds like Yoon doesn't have much of a case on his side. We don't know yet, but it sounds like the case against him is fairly strong. At no point in this process is public opinion really a factor. So you wonder, so why are the protesters there? This is by way of saying that democracy and protesting sort of get conflated, but democracy is a system of institutions, as I've said here before, and institutions that bend to the will of protesters as a matter of course are not robust democratic institutions, I would say. Democracy in a modern sense is about delegation and removing the need for constant political participation from the public, you could say. Now, in this case, the protesters do reflect the will of the people, I think, but it is dangerous to start looking at people protesting in the street and saying, oh, those are the people, capital P, because next time people are in the streets, who knows, maybe they will or will not reflect what the popular will actually is. And, you take this to an extreme. If you start treating every instance of protest as democracy, it is a short path to mob rule. But I think in this case, that's not a problem, because I think people all agree with the protesters. But part of me always thinks, well, let's not be too cavalier about seeing protesters and saying, oh, look, another victory for democracy. Maybe in this time it was. But we're not guaranteed that every time.
Right, that is something to think about for sure, Colin. Chien-Hao, what elements do you suppose of Korea's efforts to protect democracy could perhaps bode well for broader regional stability here in Asia?
Indeed, it's a very difficult question, but I'm trying to reply in this way. In the past 40 years, Korea has shown this very unique experience for having power transition peacefully. At first, it was in 1987, forcing President John Dewey releasing the power, though some students that sacrificed. And another is in 2016, when President Park was being impeached, both by the parliament and then the Constitutional Court. And now we are waiting for President Yoon, at least till now, no bleeding, and that is very special. And it did trigger some chaos or instability among, and you can see that generation, they have gap, they have some contradictions, that's unavoidably. But in the progress, you can still see a trend. It is happening again and again, and it has been condensing or embodying the spirit that people are really desiring and think it is necessary to build up and maintain and protect the democracy, the democratic system. And the interesting part is these historical moments are often being produced into cultural content, and such as novels, dramas, and movies. We just talked about it. It is being translated and spread to places outside Korea and giving inspirations or supports for those, mental supports for those who are still fighting for democratization outside Korea. For example, like in 2019, when Hong Kong have their democratization movement, many people, they were rewatching the movie of a Taxi Driver in 1987, and even the student leader Joshua Wong, he texted me and saying that what is happening in Korea for these years, and during the 2016 when President Park was being impeached. Many people in Hong Kong, they wrote to me, and they were really paying attention to what's happening. So you can see that these kind of things, those history experiences of South Korea, they are, after they are being transmitted into the cultural contents, it is indeed playing a very important role, and it is affecting people outside Korea, trying to learn something and trying to learn and trying to borrow the experience and trying to have a mental inspiration for themselves.
Right, I'm sure Korea itself is learning from its current experience. All right, Chien-Hao, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you.
And Colin, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, on that note, we end this week's editions of Press Perspective. Have a great weekend. See you same time next Monday.